College football is dying, and our leaders in both government and the sports world got together today to have a roundtable to try to figure out what to do about the wild, wild west that has become college sports. Join me on this episode of Mountaineer Paul Talks Football as we go through that discussion right after this word from our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory today across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you.
This is for Cameron.
What is up, guys? Welcome back in. My name is Mountaineer Paul, and you have landed here at another edition of Mountaineer Paul Talks Football. And it's been an off day for me. I was watching that roundtable earlier, and I just don't like to see our beloved college football, college basketball, college sports in general to be politicized the way it's being politicized. It's going to be used as leverage for votes at the end of the day, even though people there today said they didn't want it to come to that. We all know that it will. And if you're not familiar with what happened, Nick Saban, Jim Phillips, the Cavender twins, who are a set of twins that play basketball for Miami. And while they didn't add a whole lot to the conversation, most everybody else did. And so let's go through an article that kind of explains everything that was talked about. Not everything, but most everything. Then I'll give you some of my thoughts on some of the quotes and stuff like that. Nick Saban, things I believed in no longer exist in college sports. Former Alabama coach supports revenue sharing for athletes, but the overall contours of the game has changed in his eyes. Former Alabama head coach Nick Saban took a seat on Capitol Hill and talked about the money flowing into college sports on Tuesday as part of an NIL Roundtable discussion hosted by Senator Ted Cruz, Republican from Texas. Saban recently retired as head coach at Alabama after the Crimson Tide lost to Texas in the college football playoff semifinals. Part of the calculation for his decision, he said, was the state of money in sports, specifically college football, part of which ties into the money raised by collective or name, image, and likeness partnerships to support college student athletes. When Saban was asked about the role NIL had in his decision to retire, he made it clear that part of college sports played a role. Well, all of the things I believed in for all these years of coaching, 50 years of coaching, no longer exist in college athletics. Money, he said, is driving the college landscape in sports like never before. It's whoever wants to pay the most money raised, most money to buy, the most money, most players is going to have the best opportunity to win. Saban went on to say that he supports sharing the revenue created by college sports with the student athletes, but doesn't support a model in which the athletes become employees of the university. Saban attended the roundtable along with his former boss, Alabama Athletic Director Greg Beard, ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips, student athletes Haley and Hannah Cavender, who will be going to college next season with TCU. Saban recently retired from coaching after one of the most successful careers in college football history. And so there were some important questions raised in this conversation, obviously. Before we get to that, guys, don't forget to like the video if you don't mind. Subscribe to Mountaineer Paul Talks Football. If you're new to this channel, it means a ton to me. Talk about all things college football with just a little bit of a slant towards the West Virginia University Mountaineers. And last but not least, drop a comment below. Thank you guys for all your continued support. So I think, one of the most important questions that isn't going to get as much headlinage as the revenue sharing deal is are they employees or are they student athletes? What are we going to call them going forward? And some of the discussion revolved around, well, we can call them employees, but where do you draw the line? Because not all sports draw money. And when you make these specifications or you make these designations and you say, hey, X, Y, and Z are employees, but the rest of everybody else are just student athletes. You can't really do it like that. It's got to be kind of unified as a whole here. And so what happens? Well, they said basically we would just have 6 sports, right? It would come down to what makes money and what doesn't so that we can filter or back our money and put it back into those revenue generating sports. Probably limits itself to men and women's college basketball, college football, probably men's baseball, and maybe I'm not sure where you go after that. But at the end of the day, it's not a pretty sight for the athlete that isn't in college men's or women's basketball or college football. And it affects a lot more people than it actually helps. So it's once again the case of the rich getting richer and the poor being thrown to the wayside. And the student athlete part of this equation gets completely left in the dust. I just think at the end of the day, this is just not the way to go. And when asked about it, the Camden twins didn't have much to say on it. They really didn't add a whole lot to this discussion, really. I think they need to get somebody else if they're going to bring students in to talk about this, because they didn't add too much from the student perspective, just my opinion. Has nothing to do with them being women or anything like that. They just didn't seem like they wanted to be there, or they may have spoke for 10 seconds apiece anytime they were asked a question, if that. Like, they didn't go into much. They just said they wanted to have no limits and things. I mean, it seems like they were happy with the way things are, which why wouldn't they be? And so, but yeah, so they didn't have anything really against the employee part of this. And it seems like everybody's in agreement that student athlete needs to stay student athlete. Okay, so where do you go from there? Well, obviously, this revenue sharing model was brought up. And how does that work? It would take a lot of work to figure that out, far beyond my pay grade to figure it out. But I can point out some things that were said I found to be interesting. Nick Saban had a fun quote. He said, college football is revenue producing, not necessarily a business. And the quote he gave on it was, if I make a piece of art in a music classroom, and let's say it goes on Spotify, I can make a percentage of that. But since I made it in the university classroom, it's basically an intellectual property at that point, right? And so what would you need to do? You would have to have an intellectual property policy, and it would be percentage-based, the same for everybody. Obviously, and he went on to say something like, obviously the chemistry student that maybe whoever, maybe he or she solves some kind of illness or something major, probably gets a little bit more because it's percentage-based. A percentage of $1 million is going to be a lot more than a percentage of 50,000, for instance. But I thought that was interesting, and a road we could possibly go down, which obviously means that the video game, things like that could come into play. But one thing I think that everybody's in agreement with is guardrails need to be slapped on this thing. Nothing needs to be taken fully away. And then to add to that, you guys can still go out, college athletes, and still promote themselves after they earn it. The biggest problem everybody has with all of this is you're getting paid for play or paid to come play for me. It's not pay to play, right? So you don't, just like he used the example of former quarterback Bryce Young, who played a few years of college football before he got the Dr. Pepper deal, before he got the Nissan deal, and different things like that. but he earned it, right? It's not a booster or somebody that's using a collective saying, hey, come play for our university before you ever play a snap or a dribble of basketball or football. And I think that's the biggest Wild West part of this that most of us dislike is kids are not learning how to work for a dollar anymore. And even though it sounds cliche, even though it sounds like, the old man that's pointing the finger, at the end of the day, that's what it is. Kids are basically earning everything before they give anything. And I hate to bring this up, but the Jose Perez's of the world are an example of this, right? People that seem to have little work ethic in this day and age in NIL because, hey, mostly they've been given everything before they ever play a dribble. And in a lot of cases, like they said in today's meeting or roundtable, yes, you can work in pay for play as far as on the field a little bit here and there, but most of these people aren't. Has nothing to do with them playing. It's like I said on my show the other day, you're not actually getting paid for what you do on the field or on the court. It's the reverse. It's the success you get from those things give you a platform in which people want to exploit. And that's just weird to me. That's too much NFL and not enough college for me. So we need to fix it, guys, and fast, because I don't know how much longer we, West Virginias, the Marylands, the Pitts, the NC States, Virginia Techs of the world are going to survive in a world where the ACC and SEC keep getting richer. So hope you liked the episode, guys. And there was a lot more said about the roundtable than just that. But I think that pretty much encompasses the bulk of what was said. A revenue sharing model, guys. And I would love to know how you feel about that revenue sharing model. Drop a comment below. Let me know how you feel about the revenue sharing model. Let me know how you feel about an intellectual property policy. Would these things work in college sports? Do you think the athletes would go from being in hog heaven down a couple of notches to what this seems like it could be at this point? Basically saying, hey, we need you guys to earn what you get now. You're not just going to get it right off the bat. So would love to know how you guys feel about that. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel as always. If you're new to the channel, I would certainly appreciate that. As always, like the video if that's all you can do. Certainly appreciate that as well. Thank you for stopping by for this episode of Mountaineer Paul Talks Football. See you next time. This episode is over. I'm out.